the Joint Nature Conservation Committee, just to clarify, we are fully government funded. We're what's rather quaintly called an arm's length body. That means that the committee that's referred to in our title is independent. It's an independent committee of the Greater Nagoya of appointees. And although the government has recently cleaned out a lot of its arm's length bodies as part of our austerity and efficiency measures, JNCC they have kept us going, and the reason for that is because... Okay. The reason for that, oh, yes, that's better, is that they value our independence, the independence of our advice, which is policy relevant, particularly in the context of a devolved UK, where the UK government has to be able to say that it has taken proper account of the views of all the 4 countries of the UK. The way we're going to run this, I'm going to talk for 10 to 15 minutes, then we'll go into the question and answer session. So if you've got meaty questions, please save them till then. But if you can't hear, or the slides are invisible, or don't seem to make sense, or if I get overexcited and start talking really quickly, for goodness sake, just pipe up and say, because there's no point in sitting there thinking, oh, I can't make head nor tail of this. Okay, so let's look for my first slide. It's just going to be the title. Yeah, here we are. Did anybody here actually go to the Nagoya negotiations in last November, October? No, me neither. I wasn't there, but I've heard a lot of stories about what's happened, and it seems to me that was a real significant breakthrough for international conservation in lots of ways. I've called it in the title, Introduction and CBD Drivers. Welcome to my world, where CBD stands for Conventional Biological Diversity. It's got nothing to do with Central Business District. But the two concepts are not actually incompatible. The thrust of the CBD, my CBD, is of really careful and sensible use of all our resources, not just our economic and financial resources. So this is just a little guide to today's workshop. Along the top there are the 3 subjects which you've already voted on, really. Down here, these... does anyone want the lights off? See this clear, or is it perfectly clear? Okay. Down here are the 5 main goals of the Nagoya Protocol, reflected as 20 targets. I hope that adds up to 20. If it doesn't, it's my mistake. And then the sections, these are the goals which they're really talking towards. And obviously targets and indicators is quite cross-cutting. Ecosystem services, in fact, runs right through all the goals, which is obviously one of the reasons why we chose them. But protected areas and networks are also very important too. Come back over here to find the next slide. Okay, so at Nagoya, where the CBD was updated with quite a few new agreements in the last year, there were 193 countries represented, about 15,000 people travelled. I don't know the gentleman from the Botanic Garden who said I should plant 47 trees coming to Hong Kong. Can work out how many trees would need to be planted for all the travel of people going to Nagoya. It lasted for 2 weeks. Government ministers, so from the UK, our Environment Minister came for the last 3 days. Obviously the officials have been working beforehand to try to get agreement. And there were up to 7 major meetings all happening in parallel. It was quite something, I believe. This is just what follows are some pictures from the official weblog from Nagoya. It was a very, very tight and hard negotiation. It wasn't easy, and lots of things were put into a whole package to get agreement. I'd like to just read from you, because I wanted to give you a feel for perhaps what it might have been like if any of us had been there, from our UK Environment Minister's blog that was put on the staff intranet in DEFRA. And it's not published, but I'm sure there's nothing here that should mind me repeating. So I'll just read out. I'm just trying to give you a flavour of how people felt that were involved with negotiating these targets that we're then going to go on to talk about. She said, I'm here in Nagoya, Japan, for the Convention on Biological Diversity to set a new global target to reduce the rate of loss of our planet, of millions of species of plants and animals. The world is suffering the loss of species at a rate faster than that at any time in history. If it keeps going, we will continue to lose precious natural capital that could bring prosperity and a better quality of life for millions of people. And then that was earlier in the week. And then later on, she says it's Friday night. Lots of waiting and talking
followed by more waiting and talking. Then, after 2 weeks of solid talks, just after 2 a.m, an almighty cheer, we had an agreement. It's so hard to describe the feeling in the room. I think at the key moment when the gavel from the President came down, everyone's pent-up feelings were let out. We'd made it. It's been hard, with so many twists and turns in the last few hours alone. At one point, the whole deal rested on a decision on whether a country's little red light came on their microphone to speak before the President agreed a motion. We were so close. Could this really be the disagreement that could end any chance of a deal? Luckily, it was all resolved, but only after nearly an hour of interventions. But what have we done? Well, the new agreement means that the world will take effective and urgent action to halt the loss of habitats and species in order to ensure that by 2020 our natural environment is resilient and can continue to provide the essential services that we would otherwise take for granted. This will secure the planet's variety of life, our well-being, and help eradicate poverty. Just to show you the next picture, it was getting later in the day. That was when they finally had got an agreement. I've just lost my place here. She said, before I finally get some sleep, so this was 2 o'clock in the morning, I just want to say the whole department should be proud of what has been achieved in Nagoya. That's just a bit of staff motivation there from her. This is the biggest global agreement in the world in terms of the number of signatories. To get nearly 200 countries to this point, and having them all on their feet cheering this when the deal was done, should make you all very proud. And then she says, and now let's go on and put it into practice. And the Minister has made it clear that she wants the UK to take a real leading role in implementing this. So that was 2 or 3 in the morning when they finally did have an agreement. Yes, people are smiling, yes, people were cheering and jumping around. Not everybody's smiling. It was a real negotiation. Everybody made compromises. It was difficult, and they were very tired, including this poor chap. That's going to be you a lot by the time I'm finished with you. But the President of the plenary, the Organising Committee, they were carrying on as if they really had just secured the Olympics, and people were really emotional and excited about this. And even the language from our Minister, it wasn't very formal. She was actually saying this is what it was like to be here there. We're really excited to have achieved this. And this is the Nagoya Agreement. It's very complicated. There are 3 main elements. And it's very important to understand that in the negotiations, these 3 agreements were all linked. They depend on each other. And that was how the parties to the negotiations were, what they were arguing about for a long time. To oversimplify ridiculously, the developing countries, Europe particularly, wanted the biodiversity agreements and targets to be accepted. The G77 nations, negotiated for very hard by China, and some of their South American representatives were very keen on the benefits sharing and on getting more resources to implement the agreement across the world, which is their perspective, and quite fair enough says the new plan, the resource mobilisation package, which centres around the Global Environment Fund, and then this historic protocol on access and benefit sharing, or ABS, which has finally been agreed. And as I say, compromises were made, but it's a real agreement. And when you compare it to the agreement, which was not made in Copenhagen, it does seem like a real success to me. They had 49 decisions reached in all, which I'll expect you all to have learnt by heart by the end of the afternoon. And then my task over the last 6 to 12 months has been, having worked on CBD implementation in the UK for a long time, has been to look about how the UK as a whole can react to some of the new things in the target and make sure that, as our Minister has expected, we are ready and able to take a leadership role and set a good example. And so this is the vision from Nagoya, and I will read it out, even though I know you can all read, because the words in here actually cover nearly everything. They're quite powerful, although at the same time you could say they're quite bland. By 2050, biodiversity is valued, conserved, restored, and wisely used, maintaining ecosystem services, sustaining a healthy planet, and delivering benefits essential for all people. So it's about people as well as biodiversity. So what did I do? This, don't worry about the details of this. This is just to give you an idea of what I've been up to. So me and the rest of the team were asked to look for UK at what our existing strategies and policies are, and to see how fit for purpose they are for implementing the new Nagoya Agreement. So the 4 countries of the UK are on the top: England, Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales. Several of them got more than one policy document that's relevant. In fairness to England, I would say, should say they've actually just very recently, since we did this, published a new, where it says new, the new white paper, so they probably could get some more ticks by now. And we use this very simple scoring system. Single star means that there's an indirect contribution by that activity, as outlined in the strategy. 2 is that there's a direct contribution, but it's minor, and 3 stars is direct and major, substantial. And in the next slide you'll see I've actually replaced the 2 and 3 stars with minor and major. I should say that Wilson is going to put all my presentations on the Civic Exchange website, so if you want to revisit any of this stuff, that's where it will be. So you can see that, you know, in the UK we feel we're doing pretty well, but there are still gaps. We've still got plenty to do, and we're now trying to, in our non-prescriptive advisory way, point the countries towards the actions they perhaps should consider taking if they want to be able to say that they're really meeting the targets. But we've got, you know, a lot of strengths and a few weaknesses. Don't worry about the numbers of the targets, and these are, that's all going to go on the website if you want to check what they are. So I was invited to come here to speak to you people. So I thought, well, I've got used to this, what we call strategy mapping now. I know how to do this. I'll map the Hong Kong strategies. Rather cheekily, I thought I'd do that. Not in a prescriptive way, but just so you can see what an outsider coming along, looking at what you've got, what they see, and perhaps to put a mirror up to yourselves. So I sat down to do it. I did it fairly quickly. I would not like to be held to account for any of it. I've put a bit more detail in this one so you can actually see what the 20 targets are roughly about. Each target has a detailed text, which to understand the target you have to look at the text, but I've just given them shorthand names. And I went through your 2004 policy, and I went through the proposed framework that Civic Exchange had drawn up. And I felt, looking at it with, to be honest, for a fair amount of ignorance, it's a starting point, that you're not building on nothing. The original policy was very good on awareness, and that is a very, very important area. And so, and there were some places to start. There are some protected areas, there are some concepts of protected species and so on. And then I looked at the proposed framework. I didn't give any of the targets ticks, but major is a pretty good start and suggests that is probably the right direction in which you might want to be travelling if you decide that's what's right for you. That's the end of this section. I don't know how well I did for time.
Excellent. It's